Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto X Dawned Hikari, part 2, subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's start the story. Hey mom, I'm home. Kushina, who was currently tending to her garden, looked up to find Naruto coming up the path. From the way he was smiling she could tell things went well. Welcome home, sweetie. How did you go? Naruto smiled and held out the hand containing his Pokeball. I passed. Like you said, I was still at the bottom of the class in terms of grades, but being able to start my journey makes it all worth it. Kushina smiled at her son's enthusiasm. Well, don't keep me in suspense, what did you get for your first Pokémon? Let it out so I can see it. Naruto's smile faltered a bit at that. Ah, well, you see, that might not be a good idea. He has a bit of an anger issue at the moment. One of Kushina's eyebrows rose at that. Really? He can't be that bad. Just let him out already, I'm sure he doesn't want to be cooped up inside that Pokeball all the time. But mom. Naruto tried to explain, but his mother wouldn't let him. No buts. Now do it. He sighed, knowing what was about to happen. Pressing the button on the ball to expand it, he then threw it into the air where it snapped open and released his Vulpix. The little fox Pokémon shook its head before looking around, familiarizing himself with his new surroundings. Vulpix heard a squeak behind him and turned to find a red-haired woman and the blonde-haired child he had burned earlier. Wow, he is just adorable. How could you think such a cute Pokémon could be so dangerous? Kushina got on her knees and started to pet the little fox Pokémon, and Naruto could tell he didn't like being touched like that. The Vulpix growled before snapping at Kushina's hand, which she was able to pull away just in time. He then quickly jumped back and started to release an ember attack towards her. Kushina was able to get out of the way in time and not get burned. Sadly, the same couldn't be said about her prized garden. Berry plants. She quickly pulled out her Pokeball and released Melodic, who immediately saw the fire and started to put the flames out with her hydro pump. She would worry about the damage done later, right now saving the rest of the plants was a priority. Naruto sighed again before quickly recalling the Vulpix before he could do any more damage. He'd better help his mom put out the fires and prepare to explain the situation once that was out of the way. Both Naruto and his mother were now sitting down at the living room table, slightly damp from all the water that was used to put the fire out. Naruto had explained what Iruka had told him about the Vulpix's situation. The look on her face was really scary, never before had he seen his mother that pissed. He idly wondered if he was like this when Iruka had told him. Maybe. He quickly snapped out of his thoughts when his mother started to speak. To think that people can be so cruel to Pokémon. It really sickens me to think that there are people like that out there. She then shook her head before looking at her son. Sorry for not listening before, guess I should have actually listened to what you had to say before jumping the gun like that. No worries, no one got hurt in the end. Kushina sent a glare at him, the thought of her precious berry bushes burning still fresh in her mind. So anyway, I'm gonna get my stuff ready so I can get to the camping spot before the sun sets. Think I will need anything before I head out? Naruto asked. Not that I can think of. Where did you decide that you were going to set up camp anyway? Naruto went over to his backpack and pulled out his map before bringing it over so he could show her. Naruto pointed to a location just southwest of Twinleaf Town. I thought this spot would be good with Vulpix being a fire type and all. Looking at the map, she couldn't help but agree. The place had the basic needs for a camp like a running stream and some natural shelter. The main thing was it was on the bottom side of a small cliff face and had very few burnable objects in the area. Looks like a good spot, just make sure that you have your medical supplies ready just in case, get it? Naruto nodded before folding the map back up and putting it in his bag. He then got up to go to his room and prepare for the next week. Got it mom, I'll finish packing and then head off. I'll see you when I get back in a week. By then I'm sure that Kurama and I will be ready for our journey. Dadabeo. Kushina sighed at her son's enthusiasm before realizing something. Kurama. Wait, who is that? I have never heard of him before. Naruto turned around to answer. It is the nickname that I decided to give my Vulpix. It just seemed like a good name to give him. He then shot off to his room to finish his preparations. Kurama, huh? Not a bad nickname. Hopefully his attitude is fixed by the time they get back. I don't think my garden can survive 3 hot heads at once. Once again remembering the state of her garden, Kushina went over and collapsed onto the couch in the living room. All that work, ruined. Damn it, Naruto. Next time that you come here after your journey you better have some good presents for me. It had been 2 hours since Naruto had left the house and he had just arrived at the camping ground. Looking around to make sure that there weren't any wild Pokémon around, he placed down his pack and sat down on a nearby rock. Man, that walk really took it out of me. I really need to get fit since I am starting my journey soon. But I guess that is what this week is for. After a couple minutes of rest, Naruto got up and started to prepare the area so that he could set up camp. He decided to use this as part of his exercise, so he started to pick up some of the rocks and move them to the edge of the cliff base, making sure to clear a spot large enough to pitch his tent. This took around an hour to do, mainly because Naruto was turning it into a workout. After he had cleared a large enough spot so that he wasn't sleeping on any overly large lumps and made a fire pit for him to cook on, he moved to grab his pack and headed over to the nearby stream to grab some water. Making sure that the water was healthy to drink, he filled his large canteen and put it aside. Looking around, he noticed that there were some bidooфs drinking further down the stream, along with a stantler or two. He thought there would be some around with this stream being here. It was one of the reasons he chose this location. It would allow him to battle a variety of Pokémon that would come down to have a drink from the stream. Now if only he could get Kurama to cooperate. The sun was setting and Naruto had started to cook some dinner over a fire he had made. It was nothing big, just a simple stew recipe his mother had hammered into his head. It wasn't ramen, but it was definitely better than nothing. With the day nearly over, Naruto decided to finally let Kurama out of his Pokeball. Naruto had been trying to think of a good way to gain his trust and so far he had come up with very little. Deciding to wing it, he released the orange Vulpix so that he could at least talk to the Pokémon for a bit. Seeing the Pokémon stretch as he was released made Naruto wonder if Pokémon were cramped inside their Pokeballs. So far Kurama made it seem like it. Hey there Vulpix. I finally made it to the camping spot that we are going to be staying at for the next week. Sorry I didn't let you out earlier, but I was preparing the camping site for us to stay at. The Vulpix merely snorted and started to charge up an ember to fire at his so-called trainer. Naruto, seeing this, quickly backed up a bit while waving his hands in front of him. Whoa. Calm down. For now I just want to talk. If you want to burn me after we are done then you can. Vulpix, thinking over what the human in front of him said, let the ember attack die down, but still kept its guard up just in case. Okay, that's better. You don't need to get shitty at me every time I let you out, you know. Vulpix simply growled in response. Fine, calm down. Now what I wanted to talk about is the fact you were chosen to be my first starter. The thing is, I know about your past, at least some of it, and from what I heard you had a seriously bad life when it came to people. Vulpix cocked its ear up a bit at this. How did this human know about what it went through, or better yet, what did it hope to achieve by doing so? Seeing he had the Vulpix's attention now, Naruto continued. Now I won't pretend to know what you are going through because I personally have had a pretty sheltered life. But what I can do is offer you a chance to have a better life alongside me. I assure you that I am nothing like the humans you have met before and you shouldn't judge me based on others. It wouldn't be fair on other Vulpixes if I judged them to all act like you do, now would it? Vulpix growled. As much as it hated to admit it, the human had a point. Though it didn't mean that it was wrong in its assumptions most of the time. Now this is what I wanted to offer. I don't want to bring you on my journey if you are not willing to come, otherwise that would make me no better than any of the other humans that you met before. However, I want you to spend the next week with me to see if I can change your mind about humans, or at least about me being different from the ones you know. All you need to do is not run away beforehand and cooperate with me. If you still do not wish to come with me on my journey, I let you go, simple as that. The little fox Pokemon's ears perked up at that. All it had to do was put up with this human for a week and it will be free. It seemed too good to be true, it had to be a trick. Seeing the look in the Vulpix's eyes, Naruto quickly acted to prevent that doubt. Look, I know you don't trust me, give me a second and I'll prove it to you. Getting up from where he was sitting, he moved over to where his bag was, with the Vulpix's eyes on him the entire time. When he came back, the Pokemon saw that he had some string in his hands. He sat down and started to tie the string onto a Pokeball, his to be precise. After a couple of minutes, Naruto had finished crafting a crude necklace with the Pokeball at its center. Naruto then looked up and said, now I am going to give this to you on the condition that you don't run away until the end of the last day. I'll keep my promise if you keep yours, deal? The Vulpix began to think of the opportunity given to him. He could agree then run off that night Pokeball and all, but that would mean he broke a promise and he never wanted to stoop to the level of humans and break his word. Besides, he was curious if this human would keep his own promise and let him go at the end of the week. He doubted it. But, if the human did keep his word, he would be free, and if he didn't he still would be able to escape since he had his Pokeball. It was overall a win-win situation for him. Naruto could see that the Pokemon was really thinking this over. He really hoped that by giving him his own trust the Pokemon would come to trust him too, at least for this week. After a few more moments of tense silence, the little fox Pokemon looked up. Vulpix. The Vulpix nodded at Naruto before cautiously moving over to him. Naruto smiled at the Pokemon. Being careful to not make any sudden movements that might startle the Pokémon, Naruto fastened the makeshift necklace to him. Once he was sure that the necklace wouldn't fall off, he slowly moved his hands away and allowed the Pokémon to back up a bit. Alright, so we have a deal. I promise you that you won't regret this decision. Vulpix snorted, it certainly hope not. Naruto then walked over to the fire where the food had nearly finished cooking. Come on then, let's eat before we starve. There is nothing like a good dinner before we head to bed. Vulpix said nothing, moving near the fire waiting for his food to be served. Once both he and Naruto had their food, they sat down in silence and started to eat their meals. Naruto was halfway through when he remembered something. Oh yeah, hey Vulpix, you know my name, but I don't know yours. I'm not sure if you Pokémon get names when you are born. Vulpix looked up from his own dinner. Honestly, it was never given a name, it was just called by its species name. Do you mind if I name you? I thought of a really cool name for you when I first got you. What do you think of the name Kurama? The Vulpix thought about it for a bit before shrugging. It wasn't like it was like he was going to stay longer than the week, so this human Naruto he believed he was called. Could call him whatever he liked. But he had to admit, Kurama had a nice ring to it. Naruto smiled before saying, alright. Kurama it is. Now let's finish our dinner and head to bed. We got a long week ahead of us. We're going to need all the energy we can get. The newly named Kurama simply nodded before returning to its meal, wondering what the week would hold. Day 1. It was the early morning when Naruto woke up. Looking around, he saw some starlies chirping in the trees nearby, most likely also just waking up to start the day. He smiled, thinking was definitely looking forward to waking up like this when he left Twinleaf Town. Getting out of his sleeping bag, he started to do some morning stretches to start up the day. It was something his mother had told him, getting up the moment you wake up and doing stretches every morning made you feel more energetic throughout the day. And with what he had planned for the day, he was going to need it. Once he had done his stretches, Naruto then moved over to his bag and fished out some cereal and long life milk. Checking the date on the bottle to make sure that it was safe to drink, he then pulled out some poke food for Kurama. Looking over to his fox companion, he saw him curled up in a hollow at the bottom of a tree, a little bit away from where he was currently sleeping. Deciding to leave him for a bit, Naruto served up both his and Kurama's breakfast before starting to eat, as while going over a mental checklist of what he wanted to do today. He mainly wanted to get some exercise in before lunch, which was a high priority he believed. Maybe then work on mock battles with Kurama after that if he can get him to cooperate. After finishing his breakfast, he packed away his utensils before looking at his watch. Seeing that the time was 7 AM, he turned around to where the fox Pokémon was sleeping. Hey Kurama, get up already. It is morning and we have a lot to do. He shouted at the Pokémon, who woke up abruptly at the loud noise. Looking over at the source of the noise, Kurama growled at Naruto. Now don't be like that, remember you promised to cooperate for this week, that includes waking up early and getting some exercise in. I don't know if you need it, but I know I definitely do. Naruto then pointed over to where he had placed the bowl of poke food. I left your breakfast over there. I am going to go over to the stream to freshen up a bit, so I'll be back in a minute so we can start training. Naruto ran off to the river to do just that, leaving a confused Vulpix behind him. This human wasn't going to keep an eye on him to make sure he didn't run away. Why did Naruto trust him so much knowing he hated humans? He really didn't get it, but he was sure it was some sort of trick to make him feel safe. Moving over to where the young boy had left his food, he took a sniff of it to see if it was safe to eat. Not smelling anything out of the ordinary, apart from the delicious smelling food, Kurama began to dig into his meal. Naruto returned about 10 minutes later, looking a bit cleaner than he was before. Looking over to find Kurama had just finished his meal, he moved over to clean up and prepare for their training session. While he was at the stream, he had thought of some exercises both he and Kurama could do together, simple ones that would be beneficial for both of them. After he had finished cleaning up the campsite, Naruto turned to Kurama and said, well then, let's get started. First let's do some laps around the clearing for as long as we can. We will use this so that we can see any improvements that we make at the start and end of each day. Moving over to the edge of the clearing, he gestured for Kurama to come over. Kurama wasn't sure if he wanted to do this, but being stronger so that he can defend himself easily when the week was over, made him move over to where Naruto was standing. Okay, we will run together and count only complete laps. Once one of us can't go on, the other will continue until they are tired. Ready. Go. And with that they started to run at a quick pace. Naruto could see Kurama was faster than him, so he upped the pace a bit to keep up with him. Remember, we want to go for as long as possible, not as fast as possible. My mother always said the endurance to keep on going is worth more than being able to do things in quick bursts, but speed is important too though. Kurama could see the wisdom in that statement, so he slowed the pace a bit to a moderate jog. Naruto smiled at this, seeing that Kurama at least listened to what he said instead of just ignoring him. 20 minutes later the pair had managed to do 30 laps. Both were panting and sweating a lot, but both continued to push themselves. After 2 more complete laps Naruto finally collapsed onto the ground while Kurama continued to run. 2 more laps later he too collapsed, not too far from Naruto. Looking over to Kurama, Naruto laughed and said alright. I think we did well for our first run, don't you, Kurama? Kurama looked up, panting. Pix, Volpix he said before starting to catch his breath. He was surprised the human had managed to keep up with him to such a point. He always thought humans were weak and needed Pokémon to fight for them. Hearing Naruto chuckle again he looked over to see him sit up and look at him. Looks like you beat me this time Kurama, I'll definitely beat you tonight. Kurama snorted at this. What makes him think he will win next time? He will make sure that he wins every one of these pseudo races. After both Naruto and Kurama had rested up enough, Naruto decided to explain what they were going to do next. Looking over to Kurama he saw him looking at him as if he was waiting for the next exercise. Okay then, what I thought we should do now is play a little game. What we have to do is take 5 stones each of around the same size, mark them, and put them on the opposite sides of the clearing. What we have to do is take the other stones, giving us a total of 10 to win. If you are carrying a stone and are tapped by a person who is not, that person must drop the stone they are carrying and go back to their pile before making another attempt. Basically this will be training our speed and evasion. We will do this until lunchtime or someone wins. Naruto paused for a moment before smirking as he came up with an idea. I just thought of something else we could do. How about a bet? The winner has to do something for the loser after lunch so we can have some incentive to win. Kurama thought about this, what could he make Naruto do for him if no, when he won? Let him go early? No, that would be breaking the promise in a way. He needed something that would be both frustrating and productive. Ah yes, he had the perfect task. Ball. Kurama called out, nodding in affirmation. Naruto smiled at this, but was a bit unnerved by the smirk that the fox Pokémon had on his face. He hoped he hadn't thought of anything too humiliating. Alright then, help me find some stones about the size of my fist, that way you can carry them on your tails. After collecting 10 stones Naruto took out a marker and drew a big red X on each stone so they could be identified. Kurama took 5 stones to his side, while Naruto took the rest to him. Once the stones had been placed they turned towards each other. Naruto picked up a small stone next to him, saying when this rock hits the ground we will begin. With that, Naruto threw the rock high into the air. Both sides prepared themselves as the rock rapidly descended, hitting the ground with a dull thump. And the moment it touched down both parties had shot off determined to be the winner of this competition. Dawn was skipping down the road with her new Piplup by her side, humming a cheery tune as she made her way to a small clearing near her house. Looking over to her new partner, she couldn't wait to get started with him and practice coordinating. Honestly, while she was giddy with excitement about starting her journey soon, she was also a bit nervous. She had never really left home like this before and it was really a daunting thing for her. She quickly shook those thoughts out of her head, no need for such negative thinking. As she arrived at her new training spot for the week, she turned to her partner. Okay, then Piplup. Before we get started, how about we see what you are made of? Seeing that he was ready for action, she pointed at a tree that was nearby. I want you to launch all the attacks you know at that tree, that way I know what we have to work with. Piplup, seeing an opportunity to impress his new trainer, puffed out his chest with a chirp of Piplup Pip. Turning towards the tree he opened his beak and let loose a large amount of bubbles that propelled towards the tree before exploding on contact into a shower of droplets. Piplup then rushed at the tree and started to hit it with its flippers, leaving small marks in the base of the tree. After a couple of seconds Piplup then backed off before starting to growl, causing Dawn to sequel a bit at the cute action. Piplup then returned to her side and puffed out his chest in pride. Piplup Dawn giggled at her partner's actions before starting to speak. Okay, so you know pound, growl, and bubble. I can definitely think of some combinations with that, but for now let's just take some time to get to know each other. She then sat down on the ground and pulled out some poffin she had made at home yesterday. From what I have heard, I will not be able to understand what you say for a bit. That is what the teachers at the academy have told me. So why not practice understanding you now? Getting an affirmative chirp from him, he sat down opposite of her, Dawn giving him a poffin as he sat down. So, let's start with our likes and dislikes. If I correctly guess what you are trying to say, raise your flipper into the air. Piplup shouted as he started to continuously chirp, with Dawn doing her best to understand him. This seems like a nice place to sit, what do you think of Ralts? The small Pokémon cautiously moved from behind Hinata's leg to see a green field off the side of the path, with the occasional daisy dotting the grass with some color. Ralts quietly replied before moving over with her partner before sitting down next to her and a small patch of the flowers. Hinata looked over to her partner and seeing that she was acting real shy, decided to help her feel more comfortable around her. Picking some of the daisies, she started to fashion them into a daisy chain, something that her mother showed her to help ease her nerves when she was stressed. As she continued doing this, Ralts looked on with great interest. She wondered what her partner was doing. Turning to some flowers next to her, she picked them and tried to do what Hinata was doing. They both sat in silence before a small frustrated cry from Ralts caused Hinata to turn towards her. "What's the matter with Ralts?" Looking in front of the small Pokémon, she saw a couple of daisies with the stalks ruined. Realizing what the Pokémon was trying to do, she smiled towards her before asking, "Do you want me to show you how to do it?" Ralts turned towards her before gently nodding. Hinata smiled and picked two new daisies before turning towards her partner and showing her what to do. Ralts watched with rapt attention as Hinata slowly fashioned a small chain of the flowers before linking the two ends together to make a small flower crown. She then gently put the crown on top of Rat's head and giggled at the amazed look the Pokémon had on its face. Picking two more daisies, she handed them to her. "Now you try." Ralts nodded and slowly started to copy what Hinata showed her. It took a little bit longer, but eventually she had to make a crown of flowers, which she then put on top of Hinata's head. The small Pokémon chirped as she looked at her handiwork. Hinata giggled. "Thank you, Ralts, it is really pretty." Hinata could practically feel the happy emotions flowing off the Pokémon. Seeing that the Pokémon had gotten comfortable, she decided to do so also. Lying next to her partner, she began to speak. "You know, you are a lot like I was when I was younger. I was really shy around everyone and it was difficult for me to make friends. But then I met Dawn and Naruto and they really helped me gain some self-confidence, though I am still shy around Naruto." She looked towards Ralts before continuing. "When we start our journey, I'll help you the same way they helped me, that way you can see that there will always be people to help you out." "Okay, Ralts." Ralts looked at her trainer and feeling no signs of deceit, smiled and whispered a small "ral." Looking towards the clouds, she started to enjoy the thought of going on a journey with this girl. Naruto dashed as fast as he could away from Kurama's pile, rock in hand, with a little fox Pokémon hot on his tail. He managed to dodge his first assault, but not the second, as he came bouncing off one of the nearby trees and hitting the hand containing the rock. "Damn it." Naruto shouted before running as fast as he could to his pile, or lack thereof, before dashing as fast as he could back to where he dropped the rock. But it was too late. Kurama had already snatched the rock and returned it to his pile, thus ending the game. Naruto groaned before collapsing to the ground, breathing heavily. The fox Pokémon smirked before collapsing also, completely wiped out from their little competition. Who knew a human could keep up to him like this? Not to mention the guy was really stubborn, unwilling to admit defeat at his superior skill. Guess that was at least one thing they had in common. After taking a small break from their exercise, Naruto sat up and moved over to his bag, pulling out some water and food for both him and his possible partner. Sitting down the food and drink for Kurama, he started to chow down on his food. Kurama, not bothering to check his food this time, dug straight into the meal with as much gusto as his human acquaintance. As they both finished their meals, Naruto turned to Kurama, smiling as he did so. "Looks like you won, buddy. So, what is it you wanted me to do?" Kurama was now only mildly surprised at Naruto's statement, already realizing that he was going to at least keep his word on some things. "Time will tell if I will keep them all." Getting up and stretching, the fox Pokémon moved on over to some trees, beckoning for Naruto to follow. Confused, Naruto complied and moved over to where the orange Vulpix was standing. Seeing that the Pokémon was drawing in the dirt, Naruto looked over to see what looked like a kid's drawing of a house, with a small fox sitting under it. "So you want me to build a house for you? A shelter?" Kurama nodded in confirmation before running over to Naruto's gear and putting its paw on his sleeping bag. "And you want it to be comfortable for you to sleep in?" Naruto guessed. "Vulpix." Came the Pokémon's reply with a small smirk fixed on its face. Seeing this, Naruto shrugged. "Okay, I guess I have a tent after all. Makes sense if you want a roof over your head also." And with that, Naruto moved over to where the drawing was and started to gather materials to make the shelter. Kurama was confused now. No complaints. No anger or frustration. What is with this human? It wasn't acting like all the other ones it knew. Why was he different? Kurama growled before moving over to a tree opposite of where Naruto was working and laying down for a nap. "I really needed to think about this." As the fox Pokémon closed its eyes, it had one final thought. "I guess that competition was kind of fun, even if it was with a human." He smirked at this. He really did enjoy the look on Naruto's face every time he caught him. Maybe, just maybe. Naruto let out a yawn as he crawled out of his tent, completely exhausted from yesterday's events. After he managed to build the shelter to the standards that Kurama wanted, considering the materials he had to use, they then continued onto their afternoon race. They both managed one more lap than they had achieved in the morning, before devouring their dinner and drifting off into a deep sleep. Looking over to the shelter that he had made, he could see the little fox Pokemon's head sticking out of the makeshift entrance, seemingly still asleep. He wondered how he could sleep so much, since he managed to sleep through most of the afternoon when he was building the shelter. He quickly dismissed it as unimportant, since he would usually sleep in also if it wasn't for the alarm he had brought with him. After getting his morning stretch routine out of the way, he moved on to making breakfast for him and his Pokémon. As he was preparing the food, Kurama watched him through a half-closed eye, making sure to not alert the human to it being awake. He thought over what had happened yesterday. After it had woken up from its nap, it was surprised to see a rather well-built shelter waiting for him, almost completely closed off from the environment around it. He had to admit it was rather comfortable to sleep in, the human certainly didn't hold back building it. He had to wonder, was he this way with everyone or just him, as some sort of elaborate trick? No matter, he will reap the benefits of this agreement for as long as he can. Deciding he had waited long enough, he got up and moved over to where Naruto was cooking, briefly feeling to make sure that his Pokeball was still around his neck. Naruto, hearing the movement, turned to see the Vulpix moving over to sit down next to him, just out of arm's reach. Naruto felt he was at least making a little progress, seeing as he was sitting closer to him than he was yesterday. He served up both Kurama's and his meal before placing it in front of the fox Pokémon. "Good morning, Kurama. You better eat up, you're gonna need the energy. I am definitely gonna beat you today. Dadabeo." Kurama snorted at this, like that a human will be able to beat him. He couldn't do it yesterday, so why does he think he will today? Regardless, Kurama still ate the meal in front of him. He wasn't going to give him any advantage if he could help it. After they had both finished their meals, Naruto had packed everything away into their proper places. They moved over to where the start line was. Once again Naruto picked up a rock and after they were both ready, threw the rock high into the air. Both human and Pokémon shot off the moment it hit the ground. Ino let out a huge yawn as she made her way downstairs to where her mother was making breakfast, Mewtwo held gently between her arms. Sitting down at the table and placing the Pokémon next to her, she let out another small yawn before greeting her parents. "Morning mum, morning daddy." Her father, Inochi, looked over from the paper he was reading before greeting his daughter. "Morning my little princess, how was your sleep?" "It was good I guess." Ino covered her mouth as she yawned again. "Though I wish I didn't stay up so late last night playing with Mewtwo." Ino's mother set down a plate of food in front of both her and Mewtwo, who greedily started to gobble up the meal. Inochi set aside the paper to eat his meal, talking to Ino as he did so. "That's not surprising really, I was the same when I received my Drowsy. Though I'm still surprised you got a grass type as your starter and not a psychic type. That's what our family has always started off with." Ino hummed as she swallowed her food before answering. "Yeah, I thought I was gonna get one too. Not gonna complain though, Mewtwo here is as good as any psychic type." Mewtwo hearing the comment let out a small squeak of appreciation before moving to finish off its already nearly empty plate of poke food. Her mother let out a small giggle. "That's true I guess. Besides, it is good to stand out from the crowd, at least from a contest perspective." Inochi nodded at this. "Well, just make sure that you look after it properly, after all grass types need different nutrients compared to my Hypno or your mother's Starmie." Ino nodded before quickly finishing her plate off and taking it to the sink to clean it. "Don't worry daddy, I'll make sure to take great care of her." Hearing this Inochi smiled before picking his paper to start reading again. "Good to hear that, now run along and get some practice in. Make sure to be careful." Ino puffed out her cheeks at her father's words. "Of course I will be careful. It's not like I have left yet." Turning towards the table and picking up her Pokémon, she rushed to the door, picking up a small bag along the way. "See you guys tonight," she said before rushing out to practice with her new partner. Ino's mother let out a small laugh as she saw her daughter run off toward the forest outskirts. "She definitely takes after you dear. She is going to make a fine coordinator." Hearing this, Inochi grunted before looking at his wife. "That is what you believe. I for one have never heard someone gossip so much, second only to you." Hearing her laugh at this, he sighed before returning to his paper and continued to read about the recent jailbreak that occurred at a top security prison. The authorities apparently had no idea how the guy broke out. No damage to the cell, no assistance from the inside, as far as they could tell. Maybe he should contact Shikaku and see what he made of this. A couple of blocks down the road, Shikaku let out a loud sneeze. Troublesome. He thought. He was having a good early morning nap, now he just had to go and wake himself up. Pushing himself up from the couch he had chosen to take his nap, he decided to get something to eat before he continued his morning activities, part of which was more naps. Moving over to the kitchen, he started to hear his wife talking very rapidly, in a nagging sort of way. Just listening to it made him tired, he needed to be quick if he wanted to make it to the couch in time. As he entered he saw the target of all this noise, his son Shikamaru. The boy was just as lazy as he was, and it looked like he was about to fall asleep too. Deciding to save his son from a cruel fate, he decided to interrupt. "May I ask what is going on? This much noise in the morning is much too troublesome, I don't want to deal with the neighbors again." Shikamaru quickly looked over to his father with a large amount of relief. He had been sitting here for half an hour after his mother caught him trying to sneak out without breakfast. She had gone on a large rant about the importance of breakfast or something, he couldn't really remember, it was much too troublesome. His mother also turned to his father, rapidly redirecting the rant at him. "Once again your son tried to skip out on breakfast and head to his hill. Can you please talk some sense into him and make him stay and eat breakfast? He gets this from you, you know. Always skipping meals so you can nap and do very little. When are you going to teach him to be active? He is going traveling soon, he can't just expect his partners to carry him all the way." Shikaku sighed. He honestly didn't blame his son, he loved his wife dearly, but the nagging could even drive louder up the wall. Fitting too, considering her starter was a Whismer. Thinking fast, he made an excuse that would hopefully appease her for now. "Actually I told him to leave early without breakfast. Like you said, he is starting his travels soon, so I was going to have him gather his breakfast from the woods. You aren't going traveling with him, so he needs to know how to gather his own food when he runs out of supplies." She quickly looked over to Shikamaru and asked, "Is this true, Shikamaru?" He quickly nodded, he caught on to his father's plan quickly. "Yes, I was going to go over to Chowji's to pick up a book to identify plants and berries and maybe bring him with me, since we are most likely going to be on the same team." This seemed to calm down his wife a fair bit. But unfortunately, she had a knack for sniffing out these little tricks and always was able to turn them against him. You do pick some things up when you live with two geniuses. Smirking, she walks over to the cupboard and pulls out an empty basket and shoves it into her son's hand. "If that's the case, could you also fill this for me with some fresh berries and plants then? Since you are going to be doing it anyway." Shikamaru groaned, realizing he was going to have to do some work before replying with a short yes mother. He picked up his pack that had been sitting there alongside him and headed out the door to pick up Chowji, along with the book he now needed. Seeing her work done, she quickly turned to her husband as soon as Shikamaru was out the door, leveling a stern gaze at him. "So, Shika dear, any reason you tried to bail out our son?" Shikaku braced himself for what was going to be a long rant on responsibility, he was never going to get his nap now. Naruto groaned as he collapsed, once again losing to Kurama in their makeshift tag game. He thought he was close this time, but Kurama seemed to be able to keep up with his stamina quite well. That usually never happened, but then again, that was comparing him with his classmates. Against a Pokémon, well that was a whole different ballgame. Getting up into a sitting position, he moved over to the lunch he had prepared earlier, a few sandwiches for him and a small bowl of poke food for Kurama. Once again they sat in relative silence, finishing off what they had and cleaning up after. Looking over to his potential partner he decided on what to do next. "Okay Kurama, what do you say to going and having some battles with the wild Pokémon in the area?" Kurama smirked, finally he was going to get some fighting done and it has been so long since he has had a proper battle. Giving a quick growl for confirmation, they both headed out to the stream to see what kinds of Pokémon were resting there. As they were about halfway, Naruto suddenly paused. He had just realized that apart from Ember, he had no idea what moves Kurama knew, cursing his lack of foresight, he turned to Kurama, who was just ahead of him wondering what was going on. Kurama, mind showing what you know so we can be on the same page, and all." Kurama was quick to realize that this human wanted to battle the way all the others do. He was going to blast him for this, but paused. He did promise to do as he asked for the weak and technically this battling would count as that. Growling to himself, he moved over to a rock and fired his ember at it, then at the rock at incredible speeds before tackling it. He then swiped his tails at the rock, causing 6 small marks to appear on the rock before backing off and roaring loudly. Naruto for the most part was impressed, from what he saw Kurama knew Ember, Quick Attack, Tail Whip and Roar. From what he could remember, Quick Attack was learned to the later level than what most starting Pokémon are at, so he could tell that this particular Vulpix was stronger than normal. He smirked, this could work. Moving over to where Kurama was standing he whistled at the damage done. "Dang Kurama, you sure pack a punch for such a small Pokémon. I think you'll easily beat any others we find out here." Looking over at Naruto, Kurama smirked. He took the comment as it was, seeing as he was so impressed by it. He had made sure not to show all he knew in case Naruto decided to break the deal and force him to stay. Well, it seemed less and less likely as time went by. Kurama was not going to take any chances. As they reached the river, they hid in some bushes to make sure they had the element of surprise. Looking around, they spotted a Bidoof having a drink not far from where they were hiding. Naruto smirked, this was their chance. Kurama, use quick attack now. He didn't need to be told twice, dashing out of the bush and rushing straight at the startled Pokémon. Kurama slammed into the Pokémon, who was pushed back a couple of feet. The Bidoof let off a growl as he got back up and rushed to Kurama ready to deal a tackle back at him. Naruto seeing this yelled out his next commands. Kurama, use roar and then follow up with a tail whip. Kurama, who was slightly put off from the cute growl, quickly focused again and let out a loud roar. The Bidoof stumbled and fried in his charge right into Kurama and his waiting tails, which slammed against the Pokémon and launched him into a nearby tree. The Bidoof quickly got up from the brutal tail whip and against its better judgment, charged again at the Vulpix once again trying to land a tackle. Kurama gave the Pokémon a blank look and before Naruto could give an order, launched an ember at it. Unable to slow down, the Bidoof ran straight into the attack. After the attack stopped, the Bidoof could be seen collapsing from exhaustion, still slightly smoking from the finishing move. Naruto frowned at first, but seeing Kurama and how proud he looked at that defeat, he let it go and smiled. He was going to order an ember attack anyway, at least they were on the same wavelength when it came to battling. Well done, Kurama. That's one win in the belt. Good job on the ember too, I was going to tell you, but it looks like you beat me to the punch. Want to go find another challenger? Kurama looked at his human companion and, unknown to him, smiled a true smile. Vulpix, before rushing further downstream. Naruto, seeing the smile that his partner gave him, smiled at himself as he ran to follow, thinking, as he ran. Maybe I am getting through to him. Taoji let out a yawn as he walked up to his house, waving goodbye to Shikamaru as he walked further down the street towards his own place. Walking beside him was his Munchlax, who had managed to snatch a few berries from Shikamaru's basket and was quickly finishing them off. As he opened the door, he was assaulted with a barrage of delicious smells. Chaoji let out a sigh of relief, knowing that he had not missed dinner helping Shikamaru with his chore punishment. Walking into the kitchen, he greeted his parents, placing his own basket of berries and herbs onto the bench for his mother to go through later. He moved over to sit down at the table, ready to eat the delicious food that was minutes away from being served. Chaoza, who had just finished feeding his own Pokémon a larger than normal swallet and had laid down a plate for Munchlax, then moved to sit down and started to talk to his son. So Chaoji, how did your little foraging task go with Shikamaru? Managed to grab any good ingredients for us while you were out? Looking over to his father, yawning as he did so, he proceeded to tell him of his day. Well, after Shikamaru and I left the house, we went over to where I had found some orange berries the other day to see if we could find anything else. We were lucky to find a good variety of plants in the area, so we didn't need to go far to get enough for the both of us. Though we would have finished sooner if Munchlax and Shikamaru's Shuppet stopped stealing some out of the basket to eat. Looking over to where Munchlax was eating without a care in the world, he gave it a small glare before turning back to his father. Taoza also looked over to the Pokémon and he was sure he saw Munchlax sweating a little as he finished off his food. He chuckled before returning his attention to his son. That's good to hear, but get used to gathering more food than usual. When your Pokémon evolves, you are going to need more than a few berries to satisfy him. Chaoji let out a groan at that. It was common knowledge that Snorlax eat a lot, but only a few know truly how much food one can eat. There have been many reports of Snorlaxes that have stripped entire orchards and farms clean of any greenery. Honestly, Chaoji was going to have it tough trying to keep fed at a level where it wouldn't go to sleep, but not hungry enough to go demolish an apple plantation. Finishing off his own meal, Chaoji moved to go to his room. Thanks for the meal, Mom. Guess I better head to bed now, today really tired me out. Are you coming to Munchlax? Munchlax let out a quick lax. Before moving to follow his big bone partner to bed. Taoza let out a small chuckle at how fast Munchlax moved to keep up with his friend. Looks like Chaoji got a good partner for himself. He is definitely going to help him on his journey. Come to think of it, turning to his wife, he asked her a question. Do you know what Chaoji is going to be gunning for? Contests or gym battles? Hearing this, Chaoji's mom let out a small sigh. Honestly, I'm not sure, he's strong enough to do battles, but his heart might stop him, so his Pokémon won't get hurt. Taoza grunted in agreement before returning to his own thoughts. He honestly wasn't sure what his kind son would do. Whatever it was, he was sure it would be for the well-being of his own Pokémon. Day 3. Naruto let out a yawn as he prepared breakfast for himself, having already given his potential partner his own meal. Yesterday had been quite tiring for the both of them, they had battled well into the night and had a little trouble finding the camp again. Though it was a good experience, they did fight a whole bunch of nocturnal Pokémon like Huthud and a few Oddish. Kurama was doing really well against most opponents, though they did have a small argument on how to do battle a few times. Honestly, it was a good day, and he hoped today would be just as productive as then. Quickly scarfing his own breakfast down, Naruto moved to where Kurama was already waiting. Already knowing what to do, Naruto picked up a rock and threw it high into the air. As they dashed off to start their pseudo race, both failed to notice that they were being watched. Once again. Put more power into that attack. Sasuke looked over to where his father, Fugaku, was sitting before turning to his Pokémon and giving it an order. Houndour uses Ember, full power. He yelled. Betting a bark from his Pokémon, Houndour turned to the already smoldering training post and blasted it with all the power it could muster. The training post stood sturdy for as long as it could before it fell to the continuous onslaught that was Houndour's attack. Sasuke smirked at this. They had been practicing that attack the moment they got home on the last day of the academy. Looking over to his father, he could also see him smirking, pleased at the progress that his son and his Pokémon were making. Well done. It seems that you have managed to get that attack perfected. Come over here, I have something for you. Sasuke, slightly confused at what his father wanted, moved over to where his father was sitting, his Pokémon loyally following him. Fugaku reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, giving it a once-over before handing it to his son. Sasuke looked at the device, recognizing it instantly. A technical machine. Fugaku nodded, the move flamethrower to be precise. I had the best copy sent over as soon as I knew you had a fire Pokémon. Sasuke hummed before looking at the disc-like device. Seeing the basic information of the move printed on the device, he moved over to where his Houndour was resting and placed the device near the Pokémon's head. You should be proud to be an Uchiha's son, I expect great things from you. Sasuke smiled at the compliment as he started the device up, watching as it rapidly transferred its knowledge of the attack to his Pokémon. The Uchiha were definitely a proud and powerful family, they owned one of the largest technical machine companies in the region. They mainly dealt with powerful and dangerous Pokémon moves, with Flamethrower being an example. Since such moves were highly sought after, they could charge premium prices for their TMs. They were quick to buy out competitors, which led them to being highly influential within the region. If they had their way, they soon would expand to other regions and take over the business over there too. Seeing the device had finished, he quickly tossed it aside, already knowing that the device was useless now. They could have made TMs with infinite uses, but why would they do that when the customer is forced to buy multiple copies of the TMs if they want the same move? Plus those devices were expensive to make and copy, and for so little return from the sales, it was honestly not worth the effort. Go ahead. Give it a shot. Fugaku said as he placed another target for them to practice on. Sasuke nodded before moving over with his partner to give his new move a test run. Houndour, use Flamethrower. Houndour was quick to do just that. Letting out a huge stream of red-hot flames, the training target never stood a chance and was quickly reduced to a pile of ash as Houndour finished up its attack. Very good, now keep practicing. I want you to be able to beat every trainer that you meet, hands down. I will have some TMs sent to you as you need them when you are traveling, so don't worry about that part. You are representing the Uchiha Industries name when you battle, so I expect to hear many things from you. Sasuke smiled as he heard this, yes father, I won't let you down. He returned to his training with vigor. Fugaku, seeing this, nodded to himself before heading inside to pack. He had been away from the company for a bit too long and needed to get back soon. Heaven knows what the state of the place was with those loons running it when he was away. Naruto let out a sigh of satisfaction as he finished drinking from his water bottle. He was getting better at these runs, so was Kurama. They had both managed to do about 6 more laps than yesterday, and he bet that he could do more now after this quick rest. Getting up from his spot, he moved over to where the rock piles were from yesterday to prepare them for their next little completion training exercise. Interesting. Naruto screamed as he heard the voice from behind him, jumping 6 feet into the air as he did so. Kurama, hearing the commotion, started to growl at the intruder, traces of an ember attack forming in his mouth. Naruto quickly turned around and was surprised at what or who he saw. Standing there, as stoically as ever, was Shino. Shino? When did you get here? Shino twitched and then replied, I have been here since you started your training. I moved out into the open about half an hour ago to ask you something, but it seems you didn't notice me. Naruto let out a nervous laugh at that, rubbing the back of his head, ha ha, really? Guess I was focused a bit too much on my training. Dadabeo. Shino didn't seem convinced, pushing his glasses up his nose and making them glint in the sunlight. Perhaps you should also train your situational awareness to make sure it never happens again. Naruto started to sweat a little at this. Man, I keep on forgetting how Shino hates being forgotten. Sure thing buddy. Never know when it will come in handy in a battle. Shino simply nodded and moved over to where Naruto's camp was located. Naruto let out a breath he didn't know he was holding as he moved over to sit opposite his friend. Kurama slowly approached also. He had been introduced to Shino by Hinata, who had been friends with him for a while. It took some time, but eventually they got to a point that they considered each other good friends. Though with how quiet Shino was, it was easy to forget he was there sometimes. Seeing that Kurama had moved over to his little shelter and had laid down, he decided to see what his friend was after. So anyway Shino, what was it that you wanted to ask? Shino, who had found a comfortable place to sit, started to explain his situation to his loud friend. As I am sure you know, I received an Inkata as my first Pokémon from Iruka. While I am satisfied with what Pokémon I got as a starter, I have found it difficult to train, mainly due to Starly being the most common Pokémon within this area. I have brought the situation up with my father, who gave me a Pokeball to capture another Pokémon to assist me with my training and also as a graduation present. Naruto nodded at this, understanding the situation so far. So you want me to train with you and help you find another Pokémon to help you with your training? That sounds easy enough. Shino nodded at this. That is the simplified explanation yes, but I wish to capture a particular Pokémon, a Surskit to be precise. The reason being that it is not only a bug Pokémon, being my favorite type, but it is also a water type, which would be beneficial in dealing with Pokémon that would have a type advantage against my Pokémon, such as a fire or rock type. Naruto hummed as he got into his thinking position, trying to remember what that particular Pokémon looked like. I'm not quite sure I know the Pokémon you want. Have you got a picture of it? Once again Shino nodded, pulling a small photo out from his jacket and handing it to Naruto. They usually live near lakes or large bodies of still water. Naruto nodded as he looked at the photo. Its body was round with four thin legs protruding from the sides. The color of its body was mainly blue with pink markings under the beady eyes and a yellow cap with what looked like a spike on top. By the looks of it the Pokémon seemed to be standing on top of the water. Handing the photo back to his friend he scratched the back of his head, trying to think of where they would find one of these Pokémon. Well I don't know of any lakes nearby, but there is a stream not far from here. Maybe if we follow it we could see if it leads anywhere. Shino was silent as he thought about this and seeing that they had no other leads, decided to go with it. Very well then, I will wait till you have packed what you need and then we will head out. He then stood up and moved over to the edge of the forest, staring into it for any wandering Pokémon. Naruto quickly packs a few things, including food and a change of clothes, just in case he gets wet. Once he was sure he had everything he needed for this little expedition, he moved over to where his Pokémon was resting. Ready to go to Kurama? Kurama snorted. He didn't have anything to get ready with, so why ask? Regardless, he stood up and moved over to where Naruto was waiting. Naruto, sensing his partner's foul mood, tried to cheer him up. Hey, why are you so grumpy? You heard Shino, he needs help training. That means more battles, and you like battles right? Kurama sniffed at this before starting to head for the river. He wasn't willing to admit it to the human face, but he was rather enjoying the whole battling thing, just thinking about it was getting him excited. Seeing that Kurama's mood had picked up, he turned to his bug-loving friend. Ready to go? Seeing no reason to delay any longer, Shino simply nodded and started to follow the unique Vulpix. Your partner is a curious one, isn't he? He acts like he hates you yet seems to enjoy the activities you do together. Naruto laughed at this, you have no idea how right you are, buddy. Don't let him hear it though, he might burn us for saying that. Shino shivered as he remembered the little fox Pokémon's display in the academy. I'll try not to. Thanks for watching my video, see you next time, till then sayonara.